Hey there, Innovation Champions. Melissa Dinwiddie here. One of the great things about consulting for an enormous enterprise like Meta is that you can get sort of passed around from team to team, which is exactly what happened to me after my first job with a research team there went really well. The manager raved about the results to all her colleagues, and pretty soon I was working with several teams at the same time. And this led to a very interesting situation where I got to compare how different managers interacted with their teams and what impact that had on psychological safety and, let's call it, innovation confidence. So in team A, the manager was very explicit about not wanting to participate in the activities. He kind of, well, not just kind of, he very much wanted to really hold himself apart from his team and not play all these sort of what he perceived as sort of silly games. He didn't want to, look vulnerable in front of his team. Whereas in team B, the manager really just dove right in. She played right alongside her teammates. So take a guess what the energy in these two rooms was like. For team A, things felt kind of guarded, like everyone was waiting for permission. Whereas in team B, even though it was very much a group of introverts, just like team A, there was a lot more playfulness, a lot more energy, and a sense of really true collaboration. What I was witnessing firsthand was the profound impact of psychological safety on a team's capacity for innovation. When Google conducted its very famous Project Aristotle research, if you are not familiar with Project Aristotle that Google did, I encourage you to Google it or look it up. When they conducted that research to determine what makes teams effective, the number one factor that emerged was psychological safety, way more important than the individual brilliance or resources or even clear goals. But here's what really fascinated me. Psychological safety is not just about feeling comfortable sharing ideas. It's about creating what I call innovation confidence. It's that collective belief that the team can create something really valuable and new together. And it turns out leaders play an outsized role in creating this environment. And I began to notice a pattern across all the teams I worked with. The team's behavior almost always mirrored the leader's approach. When a leader was really playful and willing to appear imperfect, guess what? The team followed suit. And when a leader held back and maintained a really professional distance and they projected this sort of constant competence, the team did exactly the same. And I call this the leader's shadow, the way a leader's behavior casts this really long shadow across the team's culture, often without them even realizing it. So let me break this down using my Create the Impossible framework. And of course, if you had been following me at all, you know that my framework has 3 steps, and we're going to go through them one by one. So let's start with step 1, play hard. The first element of my framework is play hard, which is all about embracing a spirit of curiosity and exploration. But here's the catch. Teams rarely play harder than their leader. In Team B, where the manager was the first one to volunteer for activities, team members really quickly followed her lead. And There was this implicit permission to explore and to try new ideas, to try new approaches, and to be really playful with that. Whereas in team A, where the manager was really kind of sitting apart as an observer, team members were much more cautious. Without seeing their leader engage in this playful exploration that they were supposed to do, they weren't sure if it was really safe to be themselves. Now, I want to be clear, this is not about forcing introverted leaders to suddenly become extroverts. It's not at all what it's about. It's about leaders demonstrating their action through their actions that exploration and idea play are valued and also expected. So that's step one, play hard. The second element of my framework is make crap. Giving ourselves permission to create imperfect first attempts. And once again, teams are going to take their cues from their leaders. One of the most powerful moments that I witnessed was when a senior leader at a major tech company openly shared a half-baked idea during a brainstorming session. The energy in the room just instantly transformed, because if the executive was comfortable sharing something imperfect, guess what? Others felt like they could do the same. Now, contrast this with leaders who only ever present totally polished thinking, and they never reveal their process, they never reveal their struggles. Their teams inevitably develop a culture where work is always held back until it's perfect. And that means that innovation just slows to a crawl. So that's step two, make crap. Now, the third element of my framework is learn fast, extracting insights from every experience, especially the challenging ones. Now, this requires leaders to create psychological safety specifically around failure. I once worked with a team whose leader had a really brilliant practice. At the start of each meeting, she would share her favorite failure from the past week, something that didn't go as planned, but taught her something valuable. This really simple ritual sent a powerful message. In this team, we learn from failures rather than hide from them. And the result was a much more experimental culture where people took risks and learning happened really fast. So that is step three, learn fast. So if psychological safety and innovation confidence are so important, how do we measure them? Well, here are three approaches that I have found really effective. The first is the speak up test. One really simple but very revealing metric is the speak up percentage. What percentage of people in a meeting are actually contributing ideas? In teams with high psychological safety, participation is really widespread, but in teams where safety is low, you're typically going to see the same few people totally dominating, while others are just going to be silent. So try tracking this over time. If you're seeing under, say, 70% participation in your ideation sessions, there's likely a psychological safety issue to address. Second, the terrible ideas game. So this is another approach to, and that's to directly measure comfort with imperfection. And one technique that I use in workshops is to explicitly ask for terrible ideas to solve a challenge. In teams with really high innovation confidence, people get really enthusiastic about this, and it often generates a lot of surprisingly innovative thinking. But In teams where confidence is really low, people can really struggle to deliberately generate bad ideas because they're too afraid of judgment. And you can measure both the quantity of ideas and the energy level during this exercise. Both can be really good indicators of psychological safety. Third, the failure conversation. This is perhaps the most telling measure of how openly failures are discussed. In teams with really strong safety nets, people bring up failures proactively and they examine them for learning and they treat them as valuable data points. In teams that lack safety, they hide the failures. Failures are blamed on external factors, or people only mention them in really vague terms. So try asking what percentage of failures in your team are openly discussed and used as learning opportunities. You're going to learn a lot from the answer. It will tell you a lot about your team's innovation readiness. So, how do you strengthen psychological safety and innovation confidence in your team? Well, I've got 3 practical strategies to share with you based on my Create the Impossible framework. First, start with leadership behavior. Remember the leader's shadow. If you want your team to embrace play and imperfection and learning from failure, guess what? You have to model those behaviors first. So make it a practice to share your own half-formed ideas and to participate fully in creative exercises, not just sit back and watch everybody else, and to talk openly about your own failures and what you learned. Second, create structured safety. So don't rely on just sort of general encouragement. You want to create really specific structures that normalize creative risk taking. So, for example, you might designate certain meeting times as experimental zones where standard judgment criteria are suspended. You can sort of think about them as creative sandbox zones. You might create explicit rules around learning from failure. I highly recommend that. And then another idea is to use techniques like reverse thinking and terrible ideas that give you permission to think differently. Those are a few options to consider. And then third, measure and celebrate progress, because guess what? What gets measured gets managed. So start tracking the indicators of psychological safety that I just discussed and celebrate improvements. Hey, I noticed everyone contributed ideas in today's session. That's fantastic. I love how we're all getting more comfortable sharing early stage thinking. Let's do more of that. The way we handled that setback and extracted learning was really impressive. Go team. Those are some examples. There's a really fascinating paradox in innovation, and that is that the teams that accomplish the most extraordinary breakthroughs often appear to be having the most fun. They're playful, they laugh at their own missteps, they share half-baked ideas without embarrassment. Now, this is not coincidental. That sense of psychological safety, the creative safety net, that is precisely what allows them to take the intellectual risks that lead to breakthrough thinking. Now, as leaders, we often focus on providing our teams with the right tools and resources and processes for innovation. But perhaps the most valuable thing we can provide is a strong creative safety net, the confidence that they can explore widely and fail productively and learn continuously without fear of judgment. So here's your challenge for this week. Take a really clear-eyed look at your team's creative safety net. Where are the holes? What signals are you sending about play and imperfection and learning from failure? And what one habit could you change to strengthen your team's innovation confidence? Remember, in the words of creativity researcher Teresa Amabile, when it comes to creativity, intrinsic motivation, the drive to do something because it is interesting, challenging, and absorbing, is essential. And nothing kills intrinsic motivation faster than fear. Ready to strengthen your team's creative safety net and unlock greater innovation potential? Click the link in the description to book a complimentary innovation strategy session. Let's explore how the Create the Impossible framework can help you measure and build the psychological safety that empowers your team to take bold creative risks. If you found these insights about psychological safety and innovation confidence valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of innovation champions. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a new strategy for driving creativity and innovation in your work. And I would love to know your thoughts on this topic. Have you experienced the difference that psychological safety makes in team innovation? What techniques have you used to create a stronger creative safety net in your organization? Share your insights in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay playful, and keep creating the impossible. See you next time. Ciao.